And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 4A show, 59N Sports. Brian Besh, Kriag, Erwin, sitting in here. We're actually at Bullet Grill House getting ready to do our pregame show.
So we're pregaming for the pregame.
Yeah, do a little pregame for the pregame. We're going to talk a little 4A football, talk about Livingston Lions District out of 4A Division I.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't, I'm not saying we haven't talked about the Livingston Lions because during our shows we talk about the Livingston Lions a lot, but we haven't really talked their district.
Yes.
You know, and as we're getting into week 7 of high school football, pretty much everybody was on a bye week this last week. LCM had a game over against Spring Legacy this last week, but, you know, I've had the opportunity to see Lumberton way early on in a scrimmage setting, and I've had the opportunity to see Splendora in game situation.
Yeah.
And Lumberton's a really good football team, a lot of size, got some speed for over there, down there in the Golden Triangle area, dang near in Louisiana. Some of those guys got web feet. They play on wet fields really well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a plus. And Lumberton's been that team that we talked about periodically throughout our pregame shows and the amount of talent that they have. But, you know, Huffman's not the Huffman that they once were.
Yeah.
New coaching change over there, new regime. So that's going to be a little bit different for the Huffman Falcons.
And honestly, outside of clips, I haven't been able to watch a whole lot of Huffman. You've got to imagine, even though it's basically the same staff, there's going to be some turnover there because you got to figure that they're going to want to go in a different direction on some things, and so there's probably some minor tweaks here and there. I don't know if they have the same type of athletes that they've been accustomed to having over there. They've had a terrific quarterback for the last 3 years. They've had some huge wide receivers, some guys with speed, and they always seem to have like a very large back over there. So it's I don't know if we're going to see the same type of Huffman team by the end of the year because they're also one of those, as the year goes on, they seem to get better.
No, and you're correct. And you go back and you look at this Huffman schedule. They get a win against Houston Legacy, 28-27. They lose to Silsby, 48-14. Needville 20 is a win, 24-14. Navasota, 14-42 was the final there where they lost, and then they lose to Columbus 42-7. So it's like a roller coaster ride, right, for the Huffman Falcons. As you look at how they are going into this district. Moving over to Little Cypress, a 3-2 record going into this. They beat Houston Legacy. They lose to Houston Kincaid 23-6. They beat Bridge City 41-7. Lose in a nail biter to West Orange Stark 38-32. Mm-hmm. And then HJ, they defeated them 35-0. But that HJ game was the first game of the season.
Yeah.
I think if you played that game this week, you're looking at a different outcome for Little Cypress as they come into district with a 3-2 record.
Yeah. Obviously, the terrific run they had last year is probably the first thing that people think of whenever they think of LCM because the program has been down for so long and traditionally not just a super strong program, but one that I feel like is getting more on the level of the West Orange Starks, like you talk about. They've lived in their shadow forever and ever and ever. And last year they had a West Orange Stark type run through the playoffs, and there's pockets of real talent over there that's really hard to deal with. And I won't be surprised if they're able to make another run like they did last year, but probably not that team right now, and they will have to develop there.
I agree. Moving over to the Lumberton Raiders, we talked about them briefly. They beat Hampshire Fannett 38-31. I've watched Hampshire Fannett and Lumberton, and Hampshire Fannett's a very good football team. Got a big game for them this week. They win that one 38-31. Lose to St. Thomas 42-24. Now you're playing a private school there, and recruiting is wide open. for St. Thomas. They defeat Nacogdoches 52-6. Nacogdoches really not the football team that they want to be.
Yeah.
Bridge City, they defeat them 56-7. Then Tatum 48-42. Put them at a 4-1 record. And really, as I see it, and we've talked about it on other podcasts over on the LSG and everything else, Lumberton's in the driver's seat for this district as you look at it right now.
They're everybody's favorites, and I'm not going to argue with it. We watched an incredibly different team on the field last year. They've switched over from just kind of a ground and pound to where they used all those huge offensive linemen and they would block you all night long and they'd just run you to death, and every once in a while they'd toss the ball for a short gain and expect their receivers to break a tackle and go. That ain't that way anymore. We're going 4, sometimes 5 wide. We're spreading you out, and they've got huge receivers. They've got speed everywhere. They've still got those huge offensive linemen that are just able to sit back and pass block now, but they are tossing the ball downfield, and it's impressive to watch. May have had their best game that we saw against Livingston, and it was a highlight reel because Livingston really couldn't keep track. If you know anything about the Lions, they're going to run a kind of a man-free type defense to where they're manning you up and they'll have a center fielder back there, and if they're not able to beat you one-on-one, then they're going to get beat a lot, and Lumberton was able to beat them a lot that night.
Now rolling over to the bottom 2 teams. What I feel like is going to be the bottom 2 teams out of this district is we move over to the Splendora Wildcats, 1-4 on the season. Their one win was against a very bad Cleveland team, and they barely got the win there. Yeah. 24-21 was the final there, and I think if I would have had that game in my pick'ems, I would have picked it for Cleveland.
Yeah.
I've talked at length in some of our other shows about the quarterback over there at Splendora, and a very good football player and just a very bad surroundings around him. And so I look at that. Splendora beats Cleveland 24-21. They lose to Cold Spring 34-7. Galena Park 28-14. And I mean, that's a Yellow Jacket win. Mm-hmm. And we know how good they're really not. Hampshire Finette 58-3 was a loss. And then LaGrange travels all the way to East Texas and makes a statement 38-7 was the final in that game. And really, Splendora, much like Tarkington, over in the 3A level, we talked about them a lot, but Splendora is more of a softball, volleyball type town, more softball than volleyball.
It is. Tons of success in those sports. Have had a tough time as far as history in football. I don't think this year is going to be much different from that. They've had a few good years to where they've been really competitive. I think the spike in attendance over there has done them some good. They've gotten some athletes that have come through, but this year that they just lost a lot off of last year's team, and they lost what I thought was their best player, the big running back, and I've said it a couple of different times, but he was really the guy that carried the load, and then whenever they could play action off of him, and he could come out of the backfield because he also caught the ball really well. So whenever they could play action off of him and either throw screens or toss the ball downfield, that would seem to be their best weapon. I know that they've lost that now, and it's starting to show up there on the scoreboard. The quarterback is experienced, and I can say that about him. He's experienced. He's been there, and I believe he's been starting. This is his 3rd year to be starting over there.
And the sad part about this is, I mean, I think the kid could have possibilities of going and playing football somewhere else, but being surrounded by a not-so-good environment around him as far as athletes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that makes his numbers look bad.
Yeah.
And going to cause him to not be able to go play ball somewhere else.
And like I say, outside of clips, which is only going to show usually your highlights and things like that, I don't know if he's not getting enough time or if his receivers aren't really helping him out.
I can tell you, I watched him. Receivers aren't helping him out, much like Collins last week for Crockett.
Yeah.
He's not getting any help there.
And I would imagine their defense struggled a lot last year, and I can imagine it being pretty similar this year.
So moving on down to the final team in this district is the Vider Pirates. Not the traditional Vider Pirates that we're used to seeing. 2-3 record overall. A loss to Silsbee, a loss to Santa Fe, a loss to Bridgeport. kind of turned it around. St. Louis Catholic, they get a win 51-21 out of Louisiana. And then Addison Trinity Christian, 22-14 win there with the game against Little Cypress Mauriceville this week.
And if you can give me a scouting report on those last two opponents, you're a lot better than I am, because I don't know anything about the two private schools. I do know that Santa Fe is traditionally a weak football program, and generally they live in the basement, whatever district they're in.
Right.
And usually not going to be a good sign if you're losing a game to Santa Fe. I will say that they had a fantastic offense last year. It helped them. They went all the way for a district championship last year and beat out some very good teams. They tied with Little Cypress Mauriceville, I believe it was, for the district championship. But lost a lot off of that team last year. This is a system to where if your timing isn't right, then it may take a few games to get into that. Maybe that's what happens, and maybe you see a stronger Vider team by the end of the year, but right now, you're right, not a strong program.
We'll talk about games coming up here in Week 7 out of District 10 4A Division 1. Huffman's going to be hosting Livingston, Little Cypress, Mauriceville, and Vider. Lumberton and Splendora, and Vider and Little Cypress, Mauriceville. I think I've already said all that. But 6 teams out of this district, and as we progress on throughout the weeks, we're going to talk more about this district and get you up on our YouTube page, 59N Sports, and then maybe transfer this over to the LSG.
All right.
So, a lot of fun. Appreciate you tuning in, 59N Sports. I'm Kriag Erwin, Brian Besh beside me. We're going to take a break. We're going to edit this little old deal, get it uploaded for you to listen to, get ready for Bullet Grill House pregame show right after this. Y'all have a great night.